People think a heart breaks loudly, like something crashing on the floor. But I learned that sometimes it breaks in complete silence. It breaks in the small pause between one breath and the next. Viewers, I need a small favor from you. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon, and tell me in the comments which city you are listening from. Your support gives me strength and helps me create more stories like this. I remember the night my own silence told me that my world was changing. It was not a dramatic night. There was no storm, no loud fight, no raised voices, just a quiet home, a soft kitchen light, and the sound of my hands in warm dishwater. I was humming a song my mother used to sing, a simple tune about patience and hope. My son, only 8 years old at the time, walked in slowly. He was holding the edge of his shirt with both hands, the way children do when they feel unsure. His eyes were big, confused, and a little scared. I dried my hands, smiled at him, and asked, "What happened, sweetheart?" He looked around the room first, as if checking whether someone else was listening. Then he stepped closer, stood on his toes, and whispered into my ear, "Mommy, Daddy has a lover, and they are going to take all your money." The plate I was holding slipped from my hand and fell into the sink. It did not break, but something inside me did. Before everything changed, our home looked normal from the outside. People who visited us used to say, "You have such a peaceful family." I would smile politely and say thank you, even though deep inside, I always felt like something was slightly out of place, like a picture frame hanging a little crooked on the wall. My name is Maria. I grew up in a small, warm household where love was plain and simple. My parents taught me that family means patience, respect, and quiet understanding. I believed in those things my entire life. I married young. My husband was charming when I first met him, soft-spoken, confident, and very focused on his work. He made me feel protected. He made me feel like I could build a future with him. And for a while, that is exactly what we did. We bought a small house. We painted the kitchen together. We spent nights talking about the future, our dreams, our plans, our children. When our son was born, I thought I had everything I ever prayed for. But slowly, almost quietly, he began drifting away. He stopped sitting with us for dinner. He stayed longer at work. He smiled less. He looked at his phone more than he looked at me. I told myself, this is marriage. People get busy. It happens. And I kept repeating this to myself because I truly wanted to believe it. But children notice things adults try to hide. My son noticed the coldness. He noticed the distance. He noticed the nights when his father did not come home until late. One day, he even asked me, "Mommy, do you think Daddy likes someone else?" I laughed it off, kissed his forehead, and said, "No, sweetheart. Your daddy loves us." But that night, I could not sleep. Our home became a place of routine instead of connection. We lived together, but we did not live with each other. There were no big fights, just a growing emptiness that settled into the walls like dust no one bothered to clean. Still, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals. I ironed his clothes. I asked him about his day. Sometimes he answered. Sometimes he didn't. Then came the day when my older sister visited us. She watched him walking around the house with his phone in his hand, smiling at the screen. She whispered to me, "Be careful, Maria. Something is not right." But I shook my head. I said, "No, he's just stressed from work. He'll come back to us. He always does." I held on to that belief so tightly that it started to hurt. I remember a particular evening. It was raining outside, the kind of steady rain that makes the house feel smaller and quieter. I was folding laundry on the couch while my son sat beside me coloring. My husband came home late again. He smelled like a perfume I did not recognize, a soft, floral perfume. I asked gently, "You're late today. Everything okay?" He nodded, avoided eye contact, and said, "Just tired." I wanted to ask more, but his tone made it clear the conversation was over before it even began. After he went to shower, my son leaned toward me and whispered, "Mommy, why does Daddy smile at his phone more than he smiles at us?" That was the first time my chest tightened. But nothing prepared me for the moment. Months later, when my little boy whispered those painful words into my ear, "Daddy has a lover, and they are going to take all your money," I felt the world stop. I felt the air leave my lungs. I felt the quiet, painful truth settle inside me like a stone. But even then, I smiled at my child. I touched his cheek and said, "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." I did not know how. I did not know when. But in that moment, I knew that the life I thought I was living was not real anymore. And that was the beginning of everything that followed. That night, after my son whispered the truth, I tucked him into bed with the softest smile I could manage. He looked relieved, as if telling me had taken a heavy weight off his tiny shoulders. I kissed his forehead and told him to sleep well. But sleep did not come to me. I sat on the edge of the bed long after he closed his eyes. The house felt strangely unfamiliar, like I was sitting in a place I no longer belonged to. The shadows on the walls seemed longer, darker. The silence in the hallway felt like a quiet warning. I kept replaying his words in my mind. "Daddy has a lover, and they are going to take all your money." My son had no reason to lie. Children do not make up stories that complicated. Someone had told him, or he had seen something, and that terrified me more than anything. The next morning, I tried acting normal. I cooked breakfast. I packed my son's school bag. I made coffee for my husband and placed it gently on the table. He looked tired, or maybe guilty, but he didn't say anything. We ate in silence, the kind of silence people use when they want to hide the truth from each other. After my husband left for work and my son left for school, I finally allowed myself to feel it. The fear, the confusion, the quiet ache in my chest. I held the edge of the kitchen counter just to steady myself. I whispered into the empty room, "What am I supposed to do now?" That day, I cleaned the entire house even though it was already clean. I moved things around. I opened drawers. I checked his wardrobe. I wasn't looking for proof. I was looking for courage. And I didn't find either. But in the bottom drawer of his study table, I did find something. A white envelope, unopened, with a woman's name written on it in neat, beautiful handwriting. Not my handwriting. My hands shook as I held it. I didn't open it. I couldn't open it. It felt like opening it would make the truth too real, too painful. So I placed it back where I found it and closed the drawer. That evening, I finally gathered the courage to speak. When he came home, I walked to him slowly and said, "We need to talk." He didn't look surprised. It was as if he already knew this conversation was coming. He sighed and said, "Not today, Maria. I'm tired." For the first time in years, I didn't step back. I didn't say okay. I didn't swallow my feelings. Instead, I said, "If you don't talk to me today, I will start believing everything I have heard." His eyes narrowed, just slightly, but I saw panic flicker in them. He sat down at the edge of the sofa, rubbed his eyes, and said, "What did you hear?" My knees felt weak, but I held my ground. I said, "Our son heard something he shouldn't have." He froze. Then he whispered, "What did he say?" I repeated the words very slowly. "He said you have a lover, and that she wants my money." He looked at me for a long time, so long that I felt my breath tighten. Then he laughed. A short, uncomfortable laugh that did not reach his eyes. "Maria, he's a child. Children imagine things." I shook my head. He didn't imagine this. He looked away. His jaw tightened. He said nothing. And that silence told me more than any confession could. For the next few weeks, our home felt like a quiet battlefield. No shouting, no arguments, just cold sentences, short answers, and distance that felt like a wall. He came home late more often. He smiled at his phone. He hid it whenever I walked into the room. Each time, it broke me a little more. One night, after putting my son to bed, I heard him talking softly on the balcony. The door was slightly open. I did not want to listen, but the words reached me anyway. "Yes, I told you I'm handling it. She doesn't know anything. Just give me time." My heart stopped. I stepped back, afraid he would see me, afraid he would stop talking, afraid the truth would finally show itself completely. I did not sleep that night, or the night after. Days passed like heavy clouds. I moved through the house quietly, like a guest in my own home. My son watched me with worried eyes. He hugged me more often. He held my hand whenever we crossed the room. He knew something was wrong. One afternoon, while I was folding laundry, my son walked up to me and whispered, "Mommy, I heard Daddy talking again." My hands stopped moving. I felt the room spin slightly. I held onto the table so I wouldn't fall. He said, "Mommy, Daddy said he will finish the plan soon." "What plan is it?" My heart dropped. I sat down beside him, placed my hand on his back, and said softly, "Sweetheart, don't worry about grown-up things. Mommy will handle everything." But inside, I was shaking. The next day, I decided I needed answers. I needed to know what was happening before everything collapsed beneath me. So I followed him, not in a dramatic way, not like in movies, just quietly. He left for work at 8 a.m., but instead of going to his office, he turned left at the main road and drove toward a small cafe near the park. I parked a little distance away. I saw her, a young woman, pretty, well-dressed, sitting at a corner table, waiting, and then I saw him walk to her, smiling. A smile I hadn't seen in years, a smile he had forgotten to give me. He sat beside her, not across. Their shoulders touched, their hands brushed. She laughed and leaned on his arm, and he didn't pull away. My chest burned quietly, not with anger, but with a deep, hollow sadness. I did not go inside. I did not confront them. I just watched from my car, gripping the steering wheel, feeling my heartbeat slow down in a painful rhythm. After a few minutes, he handed her an envelope, a white envelope, the same kind I had found in his drawer. She opened it, smiled, and touched his hand again. And in that moment, everything became clear. It wasn't just love. It wasn't just an affair. It was something planned, something deliberate, something that involved money, my money, our home, our future, our child's security. They were planning something behind my back. I drove home in a daze. My hands were cold. My mind was spinning. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. That night, I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the empty chair across from me, the chair where he used to sit, the chair he no longer touched. I whispered to myself, "What are they planning? And how long do I have before everything is taken from me?" The house was silent, but inside me, a storm was beginning to rise. I did not confront him that night. I did not ask anything. I simply watched him walk into the house, tired and distracted, unaware that I had seen everything. He went straight to the bedroom, placed his phone on the table, and sighed the way guilty people sigh, too heavy for the shoulders, too empty for the heart. All through dinner, he avoided my eyes. My son watched both of us, sensing the strange silence spreading across the table. After putting my son to sleep, I sat alone in the living room with the lights dimmed. I could hear my husband moving in the bedroom, opening drawers, closing them again. He walked around like someone preparing for something. My heart felt tight. Around midnight, he finally came out. He stood in the doorway, his hands inside his pockets, and said quietly, "Maria, we need to talk." My throat dried. He sat across from me, the table between us feeling like a wall built over years of distance. Then, without any hesitation, he said the words I had been fearing. "I want a divorce." Just like that. No explanation, no emotion, no apology. My breath caught in my chest. For a second, I thought I misheard him. I whispered, What are you saying?" He repeated it, clearer this time. "I'm leaving. I already made the arrangements." Those words, "I already made the arrangements," felt like a knife. I asked softly, "Arrangements for what?" His silence answered everything. He looked down, avoided my eyes, and said, "I'm moving out next week. The papers are ready. I'll send them to you." My fingers trembled on the edge of the chair. My heart thudded painfully. But I didn't cry. Something inside me refused to fall apart in front of him. I asked quietly, "Is she the reason?" He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He just said, "I'm sorry. I didn't plan for it to happen." That sentence stung more than anything else. He did plan. I had seen enough to know that. I whispered, "Does she want my money too?" He stiffened. A sudden flash of fear crossed his face. "How do you—" I cut him off, my voice calm but heavy. "Our son told me." His expression changed completely. He leaned forward and said sharply, "Maria, he's a child." "He doesn't understand." But I raised my hand gently, stopping him. "I understand enough." We sat in silence, facing each other like strangers. Then he finally said it. The truth he had been hiding. "The house, the savings. We'll have to divide everything." My heart dropped. He continued, "We can settle it legally, but she believes it will be easier if I handle your paperwork myself." There it was, the quiet betrayal, the plan, the intention, not just to leave me, but to leave me broken. I felt the air leave my lungs. I whispered, "So she told you to take everything from me?" He didn't speak, but his eyes said enough. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, he was still sitting there, still waiting for me to accept the destruction of my own life. All I said was, "You can go." He looked surprised. "Maria, please understand." I said, "You can go." My voice was soft, not angry, just done. He stood slowly, took his phone, and walked to the bedroom. He slept on the far side of the bed that night, facing the wall. I lay awake until morning. The next few days felt unreal. He moved through the house with quiet guilt, packing slowly, avoiding conversations, avoiding eye contact. My son asked me again and again, "Mommy, is Daddy going somewhere?" I kept telling him, "Yes, but you will always have both of us." Inside, I didn't know if that was true. On the fourth day, I finally found the courage to take action. I called a lawyer, a woman recommended by a neighbor known for helping women in quiet, painful situations. I told her everything, all the signs, all the fears, all the whispers. She listened carefully. When I finished, she said gently, "Maria, you must protect yourself and your son." She advised me to freeze joint accounts temporarily. She told me to document everything quietly. She made me sign papers that would prevent him from making sudden financial moves. I didn't want to do any of it, but I had to. For my son. For our future. When my husband found out that the accounts were frozen, he came home furious, not shouting, but cold. He asked, "Why would you do this?" I said calmly, "To protect myself." He clenched his jaw, grabbed a bag, and left the house. He didn't return that night, or the next. 2 days later, he sent me a message. "I will collect my things on Saturday. Just one message, nothing more. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wished he would walk back into our home, look at me, and say, "I'm sorry. I made a mistake." But the deeper part of me knew those words were never coming. Saturday arrived quietly. My son was at my sister's house because I didn't want him to see anything painful. I waited in the living room, sitting near the window. The day felt still, heavy, like the sky itself understood what was happening. When he entered the house, he didn't look around. He walked straight to the bedroom and began picking up bags he had prepared earlier. For a moment, he paused and looked at our family photo on the wall, the one where we were smiling, holding our son between us. He took it down. My heart raced as he held it. Then he placed it face down on the table. He didn't want the memory. He didn't want the reminder. Before leaving, he said softly, "Maria, I hope someday you understand." I whispered, "I do understand. I understand more than you think." He looked startled. Maybe he expected tears. Maybe he expected me to beg. But I stood still. He walked to the door, opened it, paused for a second. And then he left. The door closed with a soft click, and just like that, the life I had built for years ended in one quiet moment. I sat on the floor, feeling the emptiness spread through the room, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry. Not loudly, not painfully, but softly, the way a heart cries when it has held everything inside too long. That night, something changed in me. Something broke, but something also woke up. A quiet strength, a calm resolve. I whispered to myself in the dark room, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of something I haven't discovered yet." The night he left, the house felt heavier than ever before. Not noisy, not chaotic, just heavy. As if every wall had absorbed the pain I had been holding inside for months. I walked from room to room slowly, touching furniture, touching the corners, touching memories that no longer felt the same. I ended up in my son's room, his tiny bed, his scattered toys, his drawings on the wall. Everything in that room reminded me that I was not alone. I had him, and I had a responsibility to give him a home filled with peace, not fear. I sat on his bed and whispered into the quiet, "We will be okay. I promise." The next morning, life had to continue. I made breakfast. I packed his school lunch. I wrapped his scarf around his neck because the mornings were getting colder. He looked up at me with those wide, gentle eyes and asked, "Mommy, is Daddy coming back?" My heart squeezed, but I smiled softly and said, "He will always be your daddy, and we will be okay." He nodded slowly, trusting me in the innocent way only children can. After dropping him at school, I went to meet the lawyer again. She had already prepared the follow-up documents. She guided me through everything with a calm voice that felt like a hand resting on my shoulder. She said, "Maria, this is your chance to rebuild. Do it slowly. Do it gently. You don't have to be strong all at once." Her words stayed with me. The first few weeks were difficult. Every room felt empty. Every evening felt too quiet. Every sound felt like a memory trying to return. But slowly, very slowly, the silence stopped hurting. It started becoming comforting, like a soft blanket wrapping around me. I focused on my son, his homework, his school projects, his bedtime stories. We began taking small evening walks together. Sometimes he held my hand tightly, as if afraid I would disappear too. Sometimes he skipped beside me, talking about simple things: his favorite cartoon, a butterfly he saw at school, a new friend he made. Those small moments healed me more than anything else. One evening, as we sat on the garden bench watching the sky turn orange, he leaned his head on my shoulder and said, "Mommy, you smile more now." I blinked back tears and whispered, "I'm trying, sweetheart." He smiled gently. "I like when you smile." That night, after he fell asleep, I sat on the balcony with a warm cup of tea. The street was quiet. A soft breeze moved through the trees. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. I realized something important. When a person leaves your life, they don't take your strength with them. They only take the space they used to fill. And once that space is empty, you have a chance to fill it with something better. Peace, hope, kindness. A month passed, then 2, then 3. We adjusted to our new routine. My husband sent short messages about our son, but nothing else. He stayed away, living his new life with the woman he chose. One afternoon, I received a call from the lawyer saying the final paperwork was ready for signing. My hands trembled, but my heart felt steady. Signing those papers was like closing a door softly, not in anger, but in acceptance. After signing, I walked out of the office and stood on the sidewalk for a moment. The sunlight warmed my face. Cars passed. People walked by. Life continued, and I took a deep breath, a long, slow, healing breath. That evening, I cooked my son's favorite meal. He chatted happily during dinner, telling me about school, about his teacher, about a funny joke his friend told him. I realized something then. He wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't confused anymore. Our home felt safe again, calm again, and I felt stronger. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My husband showed up at the door. It was late afternoon. I opened the door and saw him standing there with tired eyes and messy hair. He looked smaller, almost lost. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he spoke quietly. "Maria, I'm sorry." Those words were ones I thought I wanted to hear. But standing there, looking at him, I realized something surprising. I didn't need them anymore. Not the apology, not the explanation, not the closure. He continued, She left. Things didn't work out. And I realized what I lost." I nodded slowly, not in anger, not in pity, just in understanding. He looked around the house behind me, as if hoping I would invite him inside. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door gently behind me. We talked for a few minutes. He apologized again. He said he wanted another chance. He said he regretted everything. I listened quietly, peacefully. Then I said the calmest words I've ever spoken. "I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean we go back." He looked shocked, but I remained steady. I continued, "You hurt me. You hurt our son, and I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. I will not break again." He lowered his head. He whispered, "I understand." For the first time, he truly did. He asked if he could see our son more often. I nodded. He was still his father, and I would never take that away. Before leaving, he said softly, "You became stronger without me." I smiled gently and answered, "No. I became stronger for myself." He walked away, not angrily, but quietly, like someone who finally understood the consequences of his choices. That night, as my son slept peacefully, I stood near the window and watched the moon glowing softly above the rooftops. And I whispered to myself, "This is my life now. A new beginning. A slower beginning. A calmer beginning." I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I wasn't afraid. I had learned something important. Sometimes, life takes away people you thought you needed, so it can give you space to become the person you were meant to be. Sometimes hearts break softly, so they can heal gently. Sometimes endings appear suddenly, but healing comes slowly, like morning light filling a dark room. And sometimes, strength grows in silence. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. My journey was not over, but I was no longer walking in fear. I was walking with hope, and that was enough.